What makes someone walk away from leading a global team of 10,000 people, overseeing robotics for one of the biggest companies on earth, and managing billions in infrastructure to start over from scratch as a hard tech founder? My next guest has already built a career most can only dream of. With a master's degree in computer science from MIT, his journey has spanned Netscape, Amazon, and Scale AI. Why did he take the leap from the safety of big tech to be an entrepreneur on a mission to build the most intelligent, capable robots that safely work, adapt, and react around humans? In just 3 years, he has raised over $150 million from investors like Sequoia and General Catalyst, and secured clients include Mayo Clinic, the US Department of Defense, and many more. That is remarkable by any standard. Today, we're going deep on the leap, the lessons, the gut punch moments, and the wins that keep him going. Hello and welcome back. My name is Pankov from Siemens Industry Software. I'm excited to be your host of Pioneers, Startups from Dreams to Reality. In the Siemens podcast, we explore the real stories behind bold hard tech startups that are transforming industry with cutting edge innovation and the ecosystems helping them make it happen. Brad, it is such a pleasure to have you with us today.
Hi, everyone. I'm Brad Porter. I'm the founder and CEO of Collaborative Robotics, or we go by Cobot now. We're on a mission to bring physical AI, human-capable robotics, into every commercial environment, into logistics, manufacturing, hospitals, but eventually stadiums, airports, office complexes. We have a vision for robotics helping us live a more abundant life, a more abundant future, taking care of a lot of the tasks in the world, but particularly a lot of the material movement tasks that we as humans spend time moving boxes, totes, carts around. We think that can all be done better with a collaborative robot.
Before we get into that, I really want to get into the mind of Brad Porter. You had this incredible career with some of the most influential tech companies in history: Amazon, Scale AI, Netscape. When you look back, what is the common thread that connect all those companies?
Look, I've always been a technologist. I've always been inspired by technology. And I'm also really impatient, right? Like, I really want to bring this new technology to the market quickly. I look for spaces where there's an inflection point. When I joined Netscape, they just put JavaScript into the browser. You could tell that this was an application platform. It woke up Bill Gates. It woke up Microsoft to an intense competition to bring the internet to everybody, right? And I mean, we talk still about the internet boom, right? But I got in there in 1996 because I saw like this is coming and it's coming fast and it's going to be completely transformative. I knew how hard it was to build data center infrastructure. I'd been working to set up and operate Netscape NetCenter, and data center infrastructure was just incredibly difficult. And so at Tellme, we were very early pioneers in the cloud space. We were like, we can run the data centers and host the applications. In this case, it was speech recognition and voice applications. And we kind of knew that voice was going to become more and more capable as we just rode the Moore's Law curve. Amazon was building multiple platforms, the AWS platform, e-commerce platform. And again, I could see that these platform enablement was the key and where the future was going to go. But then at Amazon, I did a bunch of things. I did the drone program. I helped bring on the very early scientists and some of the early acquisitions behind Alexa. And then I took on robotics to say, this technology is ready. How do we go faster? It's the same thing when I joined Scale AI. AI is just starting to go really, really massive, right? This was before ChatGPT, but you could kind of tell we're making real progress with vector search and large language. You could just feel the energy, self-driving. And so I went into that space. But then I realized that as amazing a company as Scale was and exciting, that I was really passionate to do it myself from scratch. Like I'd been working in all of these environments, but I hadn't built my own company. And so it was never my culture. It was never my philosophy of engineering. It was always an attempt to work within the structure and the culture of an organization to bring my philosophy of engineering and leadership into those environments. But I realized that to really build the culture and engineering that I wanted, I need to build my own company. And I also realized that I had a real passion for robotics and how I thought robotics could really help in a lot of environments. How do you retrofit? How do you bring technologies in? And I just knew we needed a more capable robotic platform, but I also knew AI was going to enable that. And so it just felt like exactly the right time. And I think we timed it really, really well. The physical AI is exploding, and robotics is going to explode as a result.
Absolutely. And I hear what you're saying, and the advancement in both are in parallel. But I'm curious, is that part of the reason that you jumped from Amazon? You led one of the largest automation in their distribution center. Was your reasoning to go into scale AI because you saw that robotic has to evolve, it has to change, and we have to adopt that AI into it? All these companies that you went into, you were very early on, you saw a vision and they gave you an opportunity to build from that. Is that kind of a good summary of what you went through?
Amazon was an amazing company, amazing career experience. And, I had an amazing role, an amazing job. I describe it sometimes as COVID kind of shook the snow globe on all of us, right?
Absolutely.
And so in the middle of COVID, my wife and I started talking about what we really wanted the next 15, 20 years of our life and career and kids and family to look like. And we realized that we did want to get back to Silicon Valley. We were in Seattle, but I also realized that I had an itch to get back to hypergrowth startup world, right? Amazon was a hypergrowth engine too, so I love the speed and engine, but it was also hard to think of Amazon as the upstart insurgent anymore. We were the dominant player, and I really wanted to get back to that really scrappy, really fighting hard. And I think that, that's what resonated when I had reconnected with Alex Wang, was that kind of energy and speed and hustle. And I wanted to get back to that. My wife was looking to get back to the Silicon Valley. Our daughters were at that middle school transition. So we kind of said, hey, we're either like in Seattle another 8 to 10 years to get our kids through high school, or we're going to make the move now in the middle of COVID. And so it's always a confluence of things, but I knew that AI was the front of the wave. I thought it was going to be a little while till robotics kind of made it beyond Amazon. And, it was true. AI, we were at the front of the wave, it's exploding. But then I also, it accelerated my timeline on when I thought we could bring robotics to everyone. I felt like, okay, there's a path now to do this much faster. The AI is going to get better on an exponential curve. And if we try to, it's very hard for humans to interpolate exponential curves. But if we try to interpolate an exponential curve, robotics is going to come along, not in 15 years, but in 5 years. And if I want to get in that and really lead from the front, then it was time to build Cobot.
It's really interesting. I love the fact that you brought the family aspect into this conversation, right? Because as founders, you and I both know every decision we make affect the people around us, our loved ones. And it's great that you put that kind of the forefront of like, what do I want to do in the next 15 years? So I got to bring that factor. But you had an opportunity with Scale AI to, like you said, be that hyper growth and build that foundation or build that business with it and be able to move back to home. Why did you then jump to say, all right, I'm going to build my own?
Yeah, Scale's an amazing company, amazing place. I think what Scale did incredibly well, and what Alex and the culture and the leadership team did there, was motivated a team to really hustle and chase whatever the kind of forefront of what Alex calls the data frontier was. And that's what I learned at Scale, was really the data frontier was constantly moving in AI. What the scientists needed to feed their next models was changing all the time. And so it made sense to build a very nimble culture, very nimble engineering, very scrappy to chase all that. At the same time, my own approach and style and what I was excited about was developing product and platforms, right? Really things that can be leveraged over and over again. That's what I've done throughout my career. So Scale was amazing, and it just wasn't quite the right fit for what I was looking to build. I was looking to build something more tangible, product oriented. I've always built platforms, and to me, a platform is something that you have a foundation that you develop, and then you can build diverse applications on top of that. And it's interesting because they've all been software platforms up until Cobot, right? Like, I want to bring product to market really, really quickly. So the question was, what is the product that's going to become possible, right? At Netscape, it's like, okay, the web, browsers, portals, all this is, social media is going to become possible if we can get this browser developed and out there. And when I looked at where I thought things were going, I did think that AI is going to eat software and then AI is going to eat AI, right? So if you're going to build a product that's a platform in this space, hardware makes a lot of sense, right? And robotics makes a lot of sense. And I really felt I knew what type of robots industries were going to need. And I felt like I had unique insight into what that was going to look like and feel like and how to help these enterprises through that transformation. And so it was an opportunity to build a culture and team the way I wanted, but also to build the product I was excited about and to bring some insight that I had, both about robotics and about AI and about change leadership to the market and build, I think, what could be end up in, 10, 15 years, the most valuable company on the planet, right? That's the dream we, all have as founders. But I think we're in a space where we have that potential.
I've been in the startup ecosystem in hard tech for over 30 years. And I meet a lot of engineers or PhD that are doing research that tend to just focus on their technologies, right? You actually are identifying problems, like real problems that you want to solve. Like, were these problems that you identify, which led to the founding of your company, problems that you already identified when you were at some of these other companies? Or it was more as you were like, all right, I want to start my own company. What problems can I solve?
Yeah, there are two experiences that kind of stand out for me. One is some analysis we had done at Amazon where I asked the team to look at all the process paths where we might use a humanoid robot. What are we not going to succeed in automating some other way where a humanoid would be helpful? And we found over 40 use cases where we would use a humanoid. And then we went and classified those use cases, like what was common about them. And they were use cases where in order to do the work, you wanted to work in and around humans, right? So it needed to be collaborative. And usually you were like doing these secondary material flows, these indirect material flows. Some damaged items show up at the inbound dock. How do you get those over to problem solve, right? It's not the mainline flow. The mainline flow we're automating, with conveyors and, Amazon's Kiva robotics app. But the secondary paths, we had someone grab a tote and push a cart, right? Or it was connecting one process to the next, right? Where you needed to bring a whole bunch of material 200 feet through the building. So we looked at all those use cases and then we said, is the humanoid the right form factor for this? And the answer was no. Like if you're going to be collaborative in and around humans, first of all, in commercial environments, we use carts, right? We use carts to move things around. It's a great simplifier, right? We kind of forget how many carts there are, but if you go ask enterprises like to add up how much they've spent in carts, it's often like tens of millions of dollars in carts, right? So we buy all these carts. Obviously, we have flat floors to move them around. So we don't need bipedalism. It just isn't a necessary capability in a commercial environment. And in fact, it's kind of a liability, right? I mean, great, it's a dynamic balancing system. You think maybe we can stretch a few more inches, but the reality is you want something really, really safe. If it's going to be around humans, you want something really stable. You don't want to worry about it falling over. You don't want to lose power and crashing to the ground. Like it's just a liability, frankly, to try to put bipedalism in. And again, you're dealing with fairly flat floors, so wheels work pretty well. You don't need a quadruped. Well, one of the things we learned, a lot of people will make like autonomous carts, but you actually want to be able to load and unload or drop the cart off. It turns out the ratio of moving carts to idle carts, right, in most environments is there's one moving cart to every 10 idle carts, right? And so the idea that you put all the sensing and all the autonomy on the cart, kind of learned that lesson the hard way as well with, when at Amazon we acquired Canvas Systems. It was a great autonomous cart, but we kind of found that if it couldn't load and unload or if it couldn't drop off the cart. So that was one experience where I knew that the humanoid wasn't the right form factor, but there was real work to be done.
So you're saying that in a closed environment like a factory or a distribution center, automation as we understand it today is good enough. It's from a cost efficiency point of view, it gets the job done. But if in a more of a free flow environment where there isn't a box around a surrounding, you need more of a humanoid where it has to be so much more flexible, right? In terms of that autonomous or humanoid or automation, whatever you want to call it, is able to function without the box around to guide it. Is that where you're going and the founding of Cobot?
That's right. So imagine an auto manufacturing line, right? There are all kinds of robotic arms, whether it's a crane or a conveyor, it's moving down the line, and all these welding arms and things like that are doing the work. So think of that as the main line. But there's all kinds of material that needs to make it to that line, right? And that material movement is not automated. So the main line often gets automated because the ROI on the main line is very much there. You're going to do that same arc weld every day to pump out hundreds of thousands of trucks, right? But you've got to bring the headrests and the knobs and dials and everything to that line. And it's a little lower volume work. And frankly, it's hard to like optimize around two directions of flow. So you're optimizing around the automotive going down the line. And then you tend to use humans to do that secondary flow of bringing all the materials to the line. You can't necessarily constrain the whole factory just around feeding that material in. And so you need a more flexible robotic capability, one that can do human scale tasks, can grab the horizontal handlebar of an existing cart, can pick up a tote, can grab a box from shelving, and then ultimately, ideally, can be able to reach into that box and pull out various supplies. And that's where physical AI is going to enable these robots to be more and more capable. But it doesn't need to look like a human. In fact, electric humanoid robots are quite a bit weaker than humans, and often about 60% the strength of an average human. You don't want a robot that's 60% the strength of a human to do human tasks. You actually want a robot that ideally is like twice the strength of humans to do human tasks, right? And that's where I think if you move away from the humanoid form factor and kind of linear motion, and you move toward, hey, how do we use the torque and power of motors, of wheels? You can lift heavier things, you can move heavier carts. That's the insight and the idea. The other, you asked kind of what the inspiration, the other one was an experience I had at Mayo Clinic, walking the hallways with my dad. And I sometimes get emotional in a story because my dad, unfortunately, had a terminal cancer diagnosis and has passed away.
I'm sorry to hear, Brad.
We were walking the hallways. And as I said, we don't tend to notice all the carts. We don't tend to notice all the people moving the carts. My dad was in obviously a kind of different headspace, and he just noticed all the material movement. And he said, this place needs robots. And I was leading robotics for Amazon at the time, and I gave him kind of the laundry list of all the reasons it wouldn't work, right? Ramps and uneven floors, and you're navigating around humans and different types of material, and he just kind of said, I bet you could solve all that.
I'm getting goosebumps right now, Brad. I have to tell you, the fact is that your father, as you say, in the hospital for a very different reason, and yet saw what could be done and believed in you. And I would love, I think, hearing this, your genesis and your inspiration of the company was actually started by him. He's the one that's put that idea in your head, say, you can do it, Brad. I'm honestly getting goosebumps because I think that's the connection to your dad. And really, this is his legacy. However, you build it, but it's his legacy and believing in you. Brad, it's so impressive what you have done in 3 years. And, I talked about hard tech usually take 10 to 12 years. And what's the rate of failure? I think it's like 1 in 10 will succeed. 1 in 30 will become unicorns. I mean, those are crazy numbers, right? Yet you, Brad Porter, inspired by your dad, somehow in 3 short years, raised 150 millions with like some of the biggest VC in the world. And clients are some of the biggest in the world. Was it because of your background, your vision? Because let's be honest, you're not the first company to build humanoid, right? We just have to look at Tesla, what Elon's trying to do, and Boston Robotic and all the stuff that they have done. So you're definitely not the first one. But interesting enough, your robot, from what I can see, does not look like human. So what was it about Brad Porter that convinced Sequoia and others to say, yep, I believe in your vision. I believe in what you're trying to do. Count me in. Tell me that story, Brad.
I mean, I'll say anyone who's run fundraising will know that for the ones that believe in you, there are plenty that will tell you they think you're crazy. And I think every investor has, in some ways, their own reason for investing in something and believing in it, right? And sometimes it's because they've done a lot of work and they believe the market is there. Sometimes it's because they know and trust the founder. And often it's a combination of multiple things. So thinking about the investor, obviously I have a unique experience in the robotics world and what it takes to really deploy robotics. And so I was already kind of sought out by investors for my insight as to which robotics technologies were going to be successful, which weren't. And then I have a track record of success, both in big tech and in startups, right? In hypergrowth, I was the founding engineer for Tellme. People who know me know that it wasn't just that I was part of successful companies, but that I was a needle mover. I made an impact on those companies.
But I think the lessons learned there too, Brad, for our listener who are building their hard tech is that a lot of time when you're trying to raise money, your success is your experience, but also your network. You have to build those relationships if you ever have any inclination that you want to be a founder or an entrepreneur. Is that a fair statement, Brad?
I think so. Yes. It's interesting because there's schools of thought on how intentional to be in your networking. And there's one, I don't know, meme or something I saw, maybe other founder podcasts that said, focus on building the horizontal network amongst your friends. So I was fortunate. I came to Silicon Valley and went to MIT. I was surrounded by ambitious people. I talked about this on my own podcast this week, that I grew up in an ambitious place. Skaneateles, New York is a small little town, but it's an ambitious town. And so I think you want to surround yourself with ambitious people because ambitious people are going to do ambitious things. But I mean, did I know look, Hemant Taneja at General Catalyst was a classmate of mine at MIT, right? Did I know he was going to lead General Catalyst? I had no idea, right? He had no idea. He went and got 6 MIT degrees because I think he hadn't figured out what he was going to do yet, right? He was a smart guy. He was an ambitious guy. And it's not always fair to call it luck either, in that if you surround yourself with really talented people who are ambitious, they're going to go do things. And so Tellme was a very ambitious place. So yeah, I mean, Alfred Lin was our associate CFO at Tellme, right? And then he went in to be COO at Zappos, and we crossed paths at Amazon when Zappos was acquired by Amazon. And now he's the number one VC in the world, right? So, you get a little bit and ambitious. Yeah, I mean, the Partovi brothers, Ali and Hadi. Hadi worked at Tellme. Ali's the founder of Neo. Hadi they co-founded Code.org, like ambitious people, right? And so Emil Michael, also at Tellme, Emil went on obviously to be chief business officer for Uber, and now he's undersecretary of defense for technology, right? Like, hopefully I contributed some insight to these people along the way, but they contributed a lot of insight to me. But the point is, like, you're surrounded by ambitious people. It's they go on and do amazing things. And so when I went to fundraise, I had a network, right? But my point is, it wasn't that I went out and said, how do I, John Giannandrea, who's the SVP of AI for Apple, was my boss and CTO at Tellme, but he was at Netscape. Like, I think this is the other thing is you can actually tell, and this is the whole thesis that Neo has, that Ali Partovi has, is that you can tell very, very early on very ambitious people who are very driven. Russell Kaplan, who's the president of Cognition, we acquired his company Helia at Scale AI, but I had met him earlier as part of the Neo community, and you just knew that Russell is going to go do big, impactful things. And for someone as young as he is, he has an incredible amount of experience. I have thought about that as well, which is part of being the Neo community, part of going to Scale AI was also that I wanted my network to not just be people my age. I wanted to build a network with people, the Russell Kaplans, the Alex Wangs, and there are a whole bunch of others. Yeah, I think your network is really just about how do you associate with those folks who are going and doing amazing, impactful things. And it's energizing, right? They're smart people. And I never looked at it, though, as like, how could this be useful to me? Right? I've never said, how is this relationship going to be useful? I've said, this is a smart person that I like working with, and we're both striving to do ambitious things. And then that's just worked out.
We're not all so lucky to be able to attend or smart enough to attend MIT, right? We're not all so lucky or smart enough to get to Silicon Valley and be at the very forefront of the takeoff of Netscape and Scale AI and Amazon even, right? But the key from what I'm hearing from you, if there's a takeaway that our listening can do, is be strategic about the people you surround yourself with. If you want to be a founder, surround yourself with founders, because those conversations, those dialogues going to bring value to you.
That's right. I do think to some extent you can grab a bus ticket and get to Silicon Valley and just try to get in somewhere. We brought on a couple of students who just graduated from high school going into freshman year to help with robotic testing this summer. And I can tell you that experience is going to help them as they try to land the next internship or other things. And so, yeah, I do think Silicon Valley is a unique place in the world. And if you're ambitious about technology, whether you have the degree, whether you don't, get out here. There's interesting things to do.
So going along the same line, Brett, with respect to the amount of money that you have raised in 3 years to land the clients that you've landed in those 3 years, I really want to understand from your perspective, when was your first MVP and at what point were you able to land that first clients, right? Because I always joke, but I'm also very serious that hard tech founders fight the ugly three-headed dragons, right? The dragon of like, I need a ton of capital to just build my MVP. The dragon of like, most investor doesn't want to invest because it takes so much money. And then finding that early adopter is challenging because I used to have this saying that says everybody wants innovation until you tell them that your product's innovative, and now they want to know if they're like the 100th customer because they don't want to take the risk with you, right? So it's like, all right, I need my first one. Who will help me? But you did it, Brad. You did it in 3 years. I want to know how you did. You slayed the second dragon, right? You got the incredible investor, and you told us how you did it. I want to hear how you did your third head, which is like, I got my MVP. I'm going to the market. I'm going to sell to my first early adopter.
Well, the crazy thing is like you obviously have to sell before you have a product, right? The beauty of software and AI these days is like between the time that you sell it and someone actually signs the agreement, you can build the whole product, right? The story, Erez Agmoni was the head of innovation for Maersk. And I sat next to him at lunch at a conference and we started talking. We were in stealth at this point. We were not even 6 months in, I think. And we started chatting and he kind of asked about the robot we were building, what did it do? And I said, hey, it's a mobile collaborative robot designed for moving. And he asked me, he's like, is it like Geek Plus RoboStow, but with mobile collaborative? And I was kind of taken aback because I'm like, okay, you hit closer to the bullseye than anybody else. And I'm frankly trying not to tell people what this product is right now. And I'm like, so how did you do that? And he said, oh, I've been looking for that robot. It's the same at Amazon. I had been kind of looking for that, like what's human capable but not a humanoid. And I just didn't see it. And so we got an NDA in place. We showed some pictures, like literally drawings, right? And the other thing I know, though, this is a tricky thing in operations and robotics, which is operators are pragmatists. If a technology is more than a year away, they'll wait, right? Come back to me when it's at least within a year away. This 1 year thing has proven true. So I had to basically say, we're within a year of getting this out. Like if you're an operator, you don't know what next year looks like. You know what this year looks like. You know what your problems are. You can kind of guess that the problems I have now will still be my problems in 12 months. But 12 months from now, who knows? All bets are off, right? So you have to say, this is going to be ready in a year. And now, mind you, I had drawings and I had not yet hired a mechanical engineer. And so I told her, I'm like, we'll get this to you in a year. And so we got an NDA. I showed him the drawings. He found a use case in this transload that he thought would be the good first one. I went and looked at it and I'm like, yeah, okay, I get it. We can do this. We can move these carts, right? With our drawing. So then I hired some mechanical engineers. And it's funny because Erez would check in and we joke about this now because he came by, this was September when I told him about a year. And then by March, he'd signed an LOI for the first pilot with a delivery date of October. So I'd already slipped it a month. Right? But I had no robot. And in June, 4 or 5 months from when I was supposed to deliver a robot, he came to our offices and I had nothing to show. I didn't have a robot yet. And so I showed him better drawings, renderings, video.
More of a 3D now.
Yeah. And I could tell he was looking at me like, this guy completely bullshitted me. He's got nothing. Right? But he still liked the idea. He still liked the concept. And we joke because I'm like, you came and he was like, yeah, I didn't think you had anything. And what we had done, which was a little scary, we were trying to build prototypes as we went and it was taking too long. So we're just like, you know what? We're going to go into the design tools. So speaking of, Siemens and NX and these design tools, we went into the design tools and we designed the whole robot digitally. Again, we're supposed to deliver the first robot in October. The first parts for the robot showed up in September. Now, at this point, Erez wasn't totally surprised that I told him we were a little bit behind. He was expecting me to tell him we were a year behind. And I said, no, I'll get you robots in January. It's not going to be October, but I can get them in January. Now, again, I'm telling him this
Is he
before the parts
believing you?
arrive. He's like, okay, Brad, we can, now we're still within a year, right? I'm telling this in August, and so it's still within a year.
Well, and you're still fighting the COVID supply chain problems, right? 3 years ago. I mean, that was a mess.
We're a small team. We're like
Yeah.
14 people at this point.
Yeah. Your vendor
um,
don't even know who you are, probably don't care. So
Yeah. So we had a board meeting. We'd raised our Series A from Sequoia. So Alfred was going to on our board. But we said, look, Alfred's going to come by on November 14th. That's our board meeting. We want to show him a real robot. And so first parts arrived in September. First full robot was built and it worked in November 14th. Then we built 5 more. Between November and January, we built 5 more. And we shipped 2 of them up to Maersk to start testing. And then we went so 20 months. It was 20 months from inception of the company to first robots in the field. And that's what allowed us to raise our Series B was we did an investor showcase. I invited General Catalyst to come. I'd been talking to Hemant. We'd wanted to do something together. I really wanted Hemant and Paul and the team in on our cap table. And when they saw how fast we had gone to production, because I had talked to them during the Series A, so they had been tracking our progress and they could see, wow, Brad is delivering at this speed. And so we raised our Series B off of that momentum. And then in April, we started production operations with Maersk with our first robots. And the robots 5 and 6 are still working at Maersk, still doing the work. So part of it, I hired a very talented engineering team. Yeah, but you have to get in the field really, really fast.
that whole idea, right? Get your product in the field and fail early so you can learn from it. Because I find it frustrating as a coach or a mentor or even as an investor when I'm seeing companies that are just taking their sweet time getting it out to the customers. Because if you can find that early adopter who's honest with you, like there's nothing better, is there, Brad?
That's right. Look, it's hard to put your baby out there, right? If my baby's ugly, I want to know early. And so I think sometimes people do hesitate to put their product out there until they think it's fully ready. And yeah, I've just learned the other way. You've got to get it out there. And
Well, I think that's the whole idea of having that early adopters, right? The whole across the commercialization strategy of crossing the chasm is that identify that early adopters who's willing to put up with the mistakes or even just because the first product, the first alpha is not going to be the same with until the final product, right? And so the early adopter is willing to put up with all of it because if you are able to address a pain point that's so severe for them that they're like, well, it's better than nothing. So I might as well put up with you so that I can get something better. And what you're saying too is that because you've done that, it also helped you with your second round. So you actually did not go through a lot of the pain point of others' founder, which is like a couple of failed version. Your version almost went in and worked right away.
that's right. Our first version is working and we're doing another rev right now. We've built up the first and the next rev, but it's functionally, it's 40% less parts. It's 3 times stronger. It's got a lot of enhancements and improvements, but it's the same basic form factor. Yeah, we've been happy with how the system has performed. And so that's exciting. I think it comes from having a good understanding of these use cases and thinking about what type of robot you really, really need. There are a lot of subtle things in our robot. We put the sensing 6 feet in the air, right? So we see the world from the same vantage as humans do. We talk about this all in robotics, that would be great, but people haven't figured out the engineering always to do it. And so they try to perceive the world from somewhere between 6 inches and 30 inches from the ground. And it's just very, very hard, right? Swerve drives. Everyone does a diff drive, these 2-wheel diff drives. 2-wheel drift drives are great, simple mechanism. If you use Omniverse, it's got a whole 2-wheel diff drive model in it. It's not as precise, right? It can't move sideways. If it gets off track from a localization standpoint, it has to be like big sweeping turns. With a swerve drive, we can just like gracefully slide out of the way as somebody walks by. It's very, very smooth. Swappable batteries. God, every robot I had at Amazon, I wished it would swap batteries, right? Because why do I want to sit on a charger 30% of the time? I'm killing 30% of the utilization of this machine off the bat. And ROI is so hard already, right? If I can get 30% increased productivity out of this by swapping batteries, I want to swap batteries. But it's funny, there's like this industry thing that swapping batteries is hard. I don't know where that comes from.
It was just waiting for you to solve that problem, Brad. But is that the thing, though? Is that the thing about engineering? Is that sometimes the most obvious is also the most complex for other to, right? I'm not an engineer. I don't have a technical background, but what I learned from my engineering partner is that anything that seems really easy has a lot of engineering being done to it, so that it looks easy.
And I would say there's another trick sometimes too, which is sometimes things that everyone thinks are hard aren't actually hard. It's just that somehow we've like cognitively convinced ourselves that this is hard, right? So sometimes you just have to call BS on that. And I remember this debate. There was this debate of like LiDARs versus cameras. Like, how can it be that hard? We as humans process the whole world visually. We don't have a LiDAR. Like, how hard can it be? Right? Well, it turns out in practice, that's very, very hard, right? Vision only, optical avoidance in different conditions is incredibly hard. What we would do with our eyes and brain is incredibly sophisticated. So sometimes being an engineer and just saying, this can't be that hard, sometimes you have to have the humility to be like, all right, maybe it is that hard. Maybe we do need the LiDAR, right? So we have a LiDAR on a robot. So it turns out optical avoidance and things without a LiDAR is very hard. Swappable batteries, not that hard if you design for it. So swappable battery is an important thing. Yeah. And then just making it like a friendly, trustworthy design. I hired an amazing industrial designer. I hired one industrial designer to start. That's the design of Proxy. It's not that getting really good industrial design somehow requires like a 50-person team, right? You just have to decide, I'm going to hire a really great industrial designer and I'm going to push the mechanical team to try to deliver what the industrial designer is trying to envision. And you just have to say, we're going to do that. And then you can get a robot with an incredibly great industrial design. I think some of those insights that we knew swerve drives, we knew getting the sensors up higher, we knew swappable batteries, we knew a great industrial design would make a big difference, were the kinds of insights that we had because we're experienced in robotics. And it's funny because I think people sometimes look at Proxy, they don't quite understand why it's different, why it's such a powerful platform for physical AI. I put 3 NVIDIA GPU-based computers into it because I know that we're going to want the AI on board. So like some of those decisions, but I also knew what the bomb target had to be. And so we focused on that. So a lot of those decisions, you have to get the architecture right in a robot because it's hard to change the architecture later. And so I think we've made a lot of really, really, really good decisions. And I think the more our robot gets out there and the more people experience it, Mayo Clinic has piloted a lot of different mobility robots. And when they first saw ours, in fairness, I don't think they quite understood why it was different or better. Now that it's doing work in their environment, they're like, wow, this is so much better. It's so much more precise in mobility. It's so much better at localizing. And the fact that it swaps batteries, like now that they can see it in the environment, it clicks. And then you become dissatisfied with all the other robots, right? Because this one just made better design decisions.
I think what I hear from you, Brad, is that the technology subject matter expert that you've hired, the engineers, it isn't the fact, I mean, the latest and greatest technology that they put in is important to make your product distinct. But really, what makes it really special is that there's a user, you thought about how the user was going to use your product from the get-go, right? So all of that you talked about is really, you were in their shoes almost from day one. I saw one of your videos on your website, and you talked about how you're trying to build robot to help humans, not replace humans. And it's a topic that I've been discussing for 28 years, a CEO of an advanced manufacturing company, because that's a fear is people hear robot and they're like, oh my God, I'm going to lose my job, right? And you're like, no, no, no. We're here to make your job more safe or more efficient or more whatever the problem we're trying to solve. And so when I listen to you and you're saying we're going to make the most intelligent and capable robots for everyday work, I want to hear, what do you mean by everyday work? What is it that you're doing or what your robot is doing to make life better for that end user?
Yeah, I'll give it an example. At Mayo Clinic, we're moving carts in their specimen processing lab. They process tens of thousands of specimens a day. These are blood vials that they get processed in a lab. Obviously, Mayo does very sophisticated processing, but they're moving these around from one stage of a process to the next on carts. And so our robot is now taking on moving those carts. It's interesting because we had a fellow who works in this lab, and for the first few days, he'd been kind of glancing over at the robot. We kind of couldn't really tell what his reaction was, but he's one of the, I think, one of the more tenured technicians who's processing a lot of this. And after a couple of days, he came up to our deployment lead and said, "So I don't have to move these carts anymore." And we said, "Yeah, no, the robot's going to take over that now." He said, "That's amazing." He said, "Because the time I spend moving that cart is time I'm not spending getting someone their test result back." So this is how I think about robotics. When you have an operation, whether it's a logistic operation or manufacturing or specimen processing, you're a surgeon trying to get surgery done, you're motivated by the notion of a job well done, right? Did I accomplish at the end of the day what I set out to accomplish? Did I deliver Christmas? That's what motivated Amazon at peak. Like, we were delivering Christmas, right? And you're motivated by that. You know that, look, we've got to run at our peak performance to get these items shipped and packed. And so everyone's motivated. At Maersk, where we're helping unload ocean containers, everyone understands that, like, hey, the faster we can unload these ocean containers, we can get supplies out. And so these folks who work in these environments are motivated by a job well done if the technology helps them get the job well done, right? Helps them do a better job, maybe on time, maybe better quality, maybe faster processing. If the technology helps them get it, then I've never had a problem with deploying technology. Now, if the robot gets in the way, if the robot makes the job worse, if the robot causes quality issues, oh man, you will have an immediate rejection of that technology, which is why you have to get in the field, right? This is why you have to get in the field. You have to know if it's going to work, because once you're in the field, you will know right away, is this helping get the job done, or is this making it worse? Because if it helps, everyone will embrace it. And if it gets in the way, you'll hear about it immediately. And so there's nothing like, operators are amazing. People who do this work of just making sure that we get our labs processed, our ocean containers unloaded, are incredibly hardworking people who are incredibly passionate about the job. And this is what I mean by, we're building robots that can help us, right? Help us get a job well done. Help us to unload the ocean containers. Help us to process specimen lab. Help us move scopes from procedure rooms to cleaning and back. Just, if we can help, if robots can help, then people will embrace those robots. And I think there's an understanding now that we have labor constraints, right? We have a historically low run of unemployment, and we don't necessarily have the workforce to fill in on all these. And so we're going to need robots. It's not a question of, this is some nice to have productivity thing. No, we're going to need robots to help get this job done. And it's going to enable us to live better lives, right?
You hit on the spot, right? I mean, if the technology can be shown to improve their lives at work, it might be require a little bit changing of skills, but at the end of the day, I think all of us that are in this space, we see as an opportunity to improve human lives in whatever capacity that might be. So Brett, paint me a picture of the future. If Cobot is wildly successful, what does that look like in 10 years in your mind?
Yeah, so I continue to believe AI is on an exponential curve, and we are going to get better and better physical AI. I tell people, if you'd asked me 5 years ago whether we would be able to clear the dishes from a table, or we would better semantically understand the request to clear the dishes from the table, I would have said that maybe we would have learned to clear the dishes first before we understood semantically what that request meant. With large language models, semantically, AI now understands what that request means, right? But physically, we can't clear the dishes from a table. We don't have the dexterous manipulation AI that we need. We're going to get it, though, right? And I don't think it's going to take 10 years. I don't know if it's a year. I don't know if it's 5 years. I don't think it's 20 years. I don't think it's 10 years. We're going to get that level of dexterous manipulation. A robot like Proxy is going to be able to go into a break room in a hospital, open the refrigerator, grab a Jello, grab a spoon, take it to a patient's bedside, help them get their glasses, help them get their phone. We're going to have that kind of manipulation. And Proxy is going to be a platform for bringing that kind of manipulation into the world without the complexity of a balancing system and is it safe to have something that might fall inside. We've taken those risks and concerns away. We have a great mobility platform, great sensing. And what we're going to have is increasingly capable physical AI that can do more and more dexterous things in the world. And so over the next 10 years, as that capability, as that AI advances, we're going to see an explosion just like we have with ChatGPT. So when is the ChatGPT moment for physical AI and robotics coming? We don't exactly know. But when it comes, we need a robot that's capable of that being deployed everywhere. And so our belief is, look, we don't know exactly when that's going to come, but we have the platform that when it does come, we're going to be the technology platform that gets deployed on. In the interim, there's a lot we can do with today's level of software algorithms, AI, in moving around congested spaces, in moving carts, in moving boxes, and moving totes, in kind of simple, singulated, picking. There's a lot that we can do. We think we can sell 1 million plus robots before we even have that physical AI. So we built this very intentional strategy for how we get to market with a robot that can do real things. We went to the market and said, we can grab the horizontal handlebar carts and we can do it consistently every time and we can move that cart. And so by doing that, we're selling what we're capable of doing, but we're also selling a vision of, look, this isn't just about moving carts. This is a platform for all kinds of material movement, material interactions in these commercial environments. I ultimately think we're going to see Proxy everywhere. We're going to see it not just in hospitals and logistics and manufacturing. We're going to see it in airports. We're going to see it in stadiums. We're going to see it in office complexes. We're going to see it on college campuses because there are just hundreds of millions of carts around that are being moved. And we're going to see it even before it has all that fine-grained manipulation. But then we're going to see fine-grained manipulation. We're going to realize, wow, every operation in a grocery store, unload the truck, put it on shelves, put it on a cart, take it out, unbox it, restock the shelf, go grab the carts in the parking lot. It's not going to take 20 years to be able to do that. Within the next 10 years, we will be able to automate all of that. And if you think about the cost structure of grocery right now, it's all on the labor. And so we're going to see this massive transformation in the same way ChatGPT is transforming things by bringing physical AI onto a robotic platform that is stronger than a human, more capable than human, but very safe, very trustworthy. And that's the vision behind Proxy. And I think it's going to be the greatest transformation in quality of life and quality of work.
Really, you're just at the cusp of it, aren't you? And you just see this exploding, like all the companies that you have came from, right? Amazing. I wonder if there was ever a moment for you to say, did I do the right thing?
As I said, I sold a robot with no mechanical engineer, right? So yeah, are there days where you're like, what am I doing? Yeah,
Those were those
absolutely, right?
days.
Yeah, we're about to move into 60,000 square feet of space, right? And you got to sign a 5-year lease, and 60,000 square feet of space is more than we need right now. And so it feels a little excessive and a little crazy. So, do I have all the same founder gut punch fears that everyone else does? I do. I think, I've been fortunately successful enough in my career that that's not putting my family financially at risk to take the risk on this. And it is what I want to be doing in my career. So all of those things have added up. You get addicted to technology. And so you ask yourself, would I rather not have these highs and lows? I think the one thing I didn't realize, though, I will share this. A friend said when you have kids, you kind of sign up for a lifetime of anxiety, which is true. You worry about your kids all the time. Being a founder is the same. You worry about your company. And what I realized, and for a while I was like, this is about 18 months in or so, I was like, wow, this stress is omnipresent. It's always here. And that's scary, right? So I was thinking when does this go away? And then I thought for a second, I thought, Jensen Huang. Jensen is on top of the world right now, right? You got a $4 trillion company. He still wakes up worried about his business every day, right? And so, you know what? You just have to embrace the anxiety. We end up having a culture credo called Embrace the Odyssey. Just realize it's an odyssey. Now, my joke though sometimes is like they didn't in the Odyssey, Homer didn't like they didn't write about the part where you're puking over the side of the boat, right? Because you're, that stressed and not worried about things, right? But on the other hand, I'll take those highs and lows, right? I like being in the fight. I like building. I like selling customers. I like delivering for customers. The place I get most frustrated is I feel like we're not delivering for customers. I love the founder journey. I also think I thought about doing it when I was 20. I'm glad I didn't do it when I was 20.
I did it when I was 20, Brad, so you're probably smarter. It took me 22 years to have a successful exit. But I almost went bankrupt twice. And I always say that I would not trade any of those experience for anything. I was working a day after my son was born. But looking back, like you said, I love the high. The low was challenging, but it really just teach you who you are. It's like, yeah, I can handle that. Of course I can handle that. Like, come at me. What haven't I tried?
Well, look, and this goes back to the ambition. If you do ambitious things when you're young, right, you learn how to do them, and then you're able to do more ambitious things.
Can you point to one of the single proudest moment in that 3 years? There's so much more for you that's coming. And I'm sure we have this interview 5 years from now, it'll be something else. But sitting here today, what is Brad's single most proudest moment of having jumped from the safety of the net of working for somebody else to I'm going to be a founder and I'm going to jump off this cliff and hope I don't die?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it ties back to that story of my dad, right? The proudest moment was when we put the first robots at Mayo.
I'm sure that moment, like you said, you probably look back and remember that conversation you had with him walking the hall. And at a time, you didn't even think that you were going to be a founder. You were still working for Amazon. Scale AI wasn't even the radar. And yet somehow he believed in you that you're going to solve this problem.
Yeah, and look, I think part of the reason it's emotional for me, right? Obviously, it's emotional about my dad, but it took a lot of work. I wasn't wrong either. I told him why it was so hard, right? And it was hard, right? And it is still hard. I didn't leave Amazon to make that statement true, but the journey I went through, right, of leaving Amazon, getting back into hypergrowth, fundraising, hiring a team, pitching Mayo on this robot, that journey was just incredibly, just a number of very, very significant and difficult transitions, right? To chain together for that to end up being true, right? And so when I saw the first robot go in at Mayo, it reminded me of just how much far and how hard that journey had been. And so to see the outcome, yeah, it meant a lot.
And I think, Brad, at the end of the day, I hate to sound corny, but there's no such thing as a linear line when it comes to life or a corporate life, right? Whether it's your professional life, corporate life, or just life in general. And I can't wait to hear and see more of what you're going to continue to do, Brad. I look forward to continue hearing your stories and working with you because you are one of the Siemens startup partners, and it's a journey that we look forward to growing with you. I want to thank you, Brad. Your story has been inspiring. I hope that founders are taking a lesson that, hey, sell before you even have a product. You don't have to wait, right? Siemens Simulation allows you to build a digital twin so you can do that. Go to the market, building that circle of friends. Brad, if your story is so inspiring, if someone wants to reach out to you or learn more about Cobot, I mean, not they can go to your website, but how can they reach Brad Porter? Can you maybe give us your LinkedIn or how else can they get in touch with you?
Yeah, Brad Porter Cobot should pop right up on LinkedIn. I'm very active on LinkedIn, and so please follow. But I do look at the messages, and so just shoot me a message. And yeah, follow Cobot. I'm trying to put a lot of content out there to really educate people about robotics and the journey and what it takes to be successful. And so I do my own weekly video these days and newsletter, and so would love for people to follow, subscribe to the newsletter, and yeah, reach out to me on LinkedIn. And I do try to be active in the community at events and things like that. So it's easier now that people see more of my podcasts and things. They come up usually with some connection point already in mind, and that makes for a fun conversation. So I look forward to running into people at events.
That's awesome, Brett. Thank you, listener. If you want to learn more about the Siemens Startup Program, you can go online to search for Siemens for Startups, or feel free to reach out to me direct. I'd love to hear from you. You can email me at peng, that's P-E-N-G hyphen S-A-N-G .C-A-U at siemens.com, or you can connect with me on LinkedIn. And if you value this conversation, whether you're a founder, investor, or just curious about how hard tech gets built in the real world, make sure to follow, rate, and share the podcast. It helps us reach more people building what's next that just might change our lives for the better. Until next time, remember, innovation has no boundaries, and neither should your ambition.